And man, I do want to talk about the Muscle Shoals area here in a little while. It's such an untapped, underrated region of the world as far as music goes. I mean, there's so much talent that's come from there, yourself included. I want to talk about that here in a minute. But
Yeah,
first
sure.
things first. Let's start way back when you first got on the planet in Muscle Shoals. What effect did that musical history in that area? What effect did that have on a young Mark Narmore?
Chris, people ask that quite a bit, but it had a huge, profound effect. And I also saw it have an effect for my peer group, other musicians that were coming up at the same time as me. It was almost like a miracle, Chris, that this music industry was happening in our backyard.
Hmm.
And although we were pretty young, we couldn't go participate per se. If you're 10 years old, you can't weasel away into the recording studio, but you hear about it, and you always hear about it after the fact, which was the case for Muscle Shoals, because the artist would come in sort of incognito and sort of hidden, and
Yeah.
they kind of were chill. The musicians here were chill about it. But afterward, after they left, they could beacon the neighborhood. The Rolling Stones were in town, or Cher, or whoever. So that had a profound effect on me. Chris, maybe had I not been born here, I wouldn't have had a huge interest in recording and writing and playing music if I had not been born in a music center like this.
And geographically speaking, I mean, you're in southern U.S., so country's always going to be a part there, but also blues and jazz and stuff like that. You're within a few hundred miles of all of these different epicenters for different genres. What did
Right.
that do for you? Because I know that your music, you're known for country music, but really, you're more jazzy and bluesy than what your songs that you're known for are.
Yes, you're right. There was some pull from listening to Nashville radio and the hits, but I grew up really. I started playing piano at age 5. So by age 10 or 11, I was playing in church. I mean, funky gospel. You can imagine here in Muscle Shoals, it
Right.
wasn't the aria, really proper sounding things you would think of church music. We were funky, man. We were like
Mm.
really soulful. So I picked up on that piano styling, and and that's sort of core for me over all the years is the gospel piano.
Right. And that's definitely a different path. I mean, every songwriter has a different path to their creative process, but with you, it's always been piano. With a lot of other folks, it's the acoustic guitar. It can even be percussion. But I
Right.
always love to hear the different. People get there the same way, but the vehicle to get there is often different between different songwriters. And that's always interested me as a pianist, how you get there differently than an acoustic guitarist might. You know what I mean?
Exactly, exactly. And I like guitar too. I'm not a great guitarist, but when I was working for Fame here in the Shoals, Rick Hall told me, he said, "Son, you're playing too many ballads on that piano. You need to
Right.
write a small tempo song." So around Fame, there were so many great guitar players. So I sort of
Mm.
mimicked. They were sort of mimicking James Taylor,
Hmm.
Chris. They were
Yeah.
doing the finger picking and 70s sounding beautiful chords. So I was trying to do mimicry just a little bit on the guitar playing, but I'm not great at it.
And how much of your inspirations as a youngster in the area were local artists? Like how much were you polling locally as opposed to national radio and mainstream?
At the time when I was 10 or 11, probably not so much mainstream radio from local acts, but my first cousin, Spooner Oldham, he was one of the guys that got the Muscle Shoals scene started. So he was on board with the Aretha Franklin sessions at
Wow.
Fame, Wilson Pickett. So Spooner's 20 years older than me. He still lives around the Shoals, but he also had a profound influence on me because I knew, we had record albums laying in our home, and I'd say, "Mom, who is Aretha Franklin, and what is this? Why do we have this?" And she goes, "Oh, yeah, your cousin Spooner. Look on the back. He played piano and organ on
Wow,
this whole record. And so I'm going like, wow, I'm in. I want to do this.
that's
I
amazing.
want to be like Spooner.
That's amazing. And so you did end up going to school, University of North Alabama, and you were interested in music enough that you made music essentially your degree was in commercial music. Um,
Yeah, yes, it
what
was.
what
It
benefits
was.
did the degree have for future Mark Narmore in the music industry?
For some reason, I always liked words and the English language. And I just think the music business degree probably did help, maybe like with studio techniques, because I got to hang with some great engineers and they would, you're an engineer yourself and piano player. So learning those little tips and tricks, they
Hmm.
last for a lifetime. But also just the universality, universal knowledge, improving my vocabulary, being to speak on podcast 40 years later with you and sound like an intelligent human being. I think it's helped me in life just having a good vocabulary. That's what one thing college did, really.
Nice, and I know that vocabulary and syllable count and all that stuff is important in the creation of a song as well. So there is
So it
that.
all parlays together, doesn't it? Yes.
Yeah, it's funny looking back now that we're older. I'm not going to say old, but older. It's funny how
Yeah.
our situations and our experiences always kind of prepare us for the things that we're meant to do later on. Isn't that funny?
It really is. It's really cool.
Yeah.
Meant to be almost, predestined.
Okay, so tell us about the first time you kind of dipped your toes into the songwriting world, and looking back at those times, what mistakes can the older, more wise Mark Narmore see that you didn't know at the time?
Well, the first song I wrote, I remember the song. It was sort of patterned after, believe it or not, the Partridge Family or say Bobby Goldsboro,
Let's go.
because when I was 10 years old, we would get the Kellogg's box of cereal. I don't know if you remember this. On the back, occasionally would be a record, like a
Yeah.
30, 35, like a thin record. You'd have to put coins on it, but I had one with the Partridge Family and Bobby Goldsboro. So I was trying to mimic and make up songs in my head that sounded like the sound of the day. And this one song, it was you got to have courage to go on through this world. Courage. You can't thank no one but a girl. Courage and someone else to see you through. Courage makes your life brand new. So I'm 10 years old writing this song, and really, all in all, it didn't make any sense. It just sort of sounded like the cadence of what I was hearing and the words and courage, and girl was and you'd hear that in songs a lot. So I was mimicking and not learning how to make sense yet with my songwriting. And then at 14 years old, I was playing in with we were two dudes playing guitar, me and my friend Brent, and we were going to talent shows. And I wrote this song called Love Me or Leave Me. Again, it was a rock song. Looking back, it did not make the chorus didn't even make any sense at all. But it sounded the cadence of the words came off the tongue really well, and it's like like zipper zapper, purple porpoise. I mean, not that, but it was just
Mhm.
it was almost like random words that didn't make sense. Love me or leave me.
How important to you as a songwriter is alliteration like that? You know, the same sounding syllables and stuff.
Maybe it comes from that primordial thing we're talking about there when we're young. It's very important to me. Very, very important. The literary devices and especially alliteration, imagery has always been super important to me, especially in country music where you have to create sort of a movie in 3 minutes. I think it helps to be able to put furniture in there, visuals that people
Mhm.
boom, bammo, they get the picture automatically sometimes, right?
And yeah, that's definitely something that over the years has, I think, eroded quite a bit with country music and other genres. And I mean,
Right.
thankfully, there's still lots of artists out there that imagery is important. But do you feel like the modern songwriter is not paying attention to that the drapes, so to speak, of a song?
Probably up until about a year or two ago, and I started really delving in and listening to like current country music artists like Jelly Roll, Cody Johnson, especially Cody, and some of the other artists. I'm hearing a little bit of folkness about the lyrics, so
Yes, yeah.
that's very nice that that's sort of emerging back into it a little.
Thank God for that too, because like
Yes,
again, the music and the lyrics especially was really getting watered down. So Cody's a good example.
yeah,
Jelly Roll definitely as well. Post Malone. There's even some pop songwriters today are really doing a good job of bringing in a story to the song.
right, exactly, man. I totally agree.